My name is Kyle Crane. And finally, I'm out. Thought they could control me. Now, I will tear them apart. One by one.
Techland is here with their newest Dying Light game, and after putting over 300 hours into the first two games, and a little over 40 in the newest one, you could say I'm a little bit of a Dying Light expert. And while Dying Light the Beast is pretty fun,
Мистер Бист, Рис, Мистер Бист, ест рис, посмотри.
Just like all the other Dying Lights due to its basic gameplay and fun mechanics that are prevalent in each of them, I also think that it's pretty obvious that this was going to be a DLC for Dying Light 2 at some point, due to the fact that it's definitely lacking in a few areas, and pretty much just feels exactly like Dying Light 2 in its current state, after a couple years of updates, given that it was pretty dog shit on release.
So that's the story you ain't going to tell. You're a second piece of shit. What matters is, I
I'll do it right.
So I'll just say right off the bat that if you like the first two games, you'll most likely definitely like this one, but I also think it's really stretching to hit that $60 price tag for the reasons I'm going to talk about in this review. So without wasting any more time, let's get into the gameplay.
Future, huh?
So like I said in the intro, the overall combat is pretty much exactly like Dying Light 2 in its current state. Everything you know and love is still there, from the charged attacks, to the aerial takedowns, and of course the dropkick.
Get that ass in.
And just like in the previous games, the gore and dismemberment is just as satisfying as it's ever been, and also looks the best out of all the games, as you could probably imagine, being the newest release. Although in terms of the gore, there is one big downside, and that's the fact that for some reason they seem to have gotten rid of the X-ray attacks that would happen in the previous games when you used a blunt weapon like a sledgehammer. I have no idea why they would have gotten rid of these, but I'm sure they'll bring it back with enough complaining. And in terms of the parkour, it also works pretty much the exact same way Dying Light 2 does in its current state, where climbing and jumping doesn't consume any stamina, and the only thing that drains your stamina is combat and sprinting, which I much prefer because that made playing Dying Light 2 on launch feel like absolute fucking dog shit, where I would constantly run out of stamina while trying to climb up walls during several of the large climbing segments forced in the story, all because Aiden had the lung capacity of a cigarette-addicted toddler.
He rose from circuits, chrome and void, no longer Floyd, now charge, droid! A
Without getting into the new beast powers just yet though, I am pretty disappointed to say that they only really seem to have added one new actual skill, with that being the charge kick. And I gotta say, I mean, it's a pretty fun new skill, but I mean, really, that's it? One new skill? One new skill to your base kit? I feel like they definitely could have done a bit more. They actually even got rid of a skill from Dying Light 2, with that being the tackle, which was especially fun to do since you could tackle enemies from the top of buildings and then use them to cushion your fall.
Get the fuck away from me, you fucking dick.
And while I'm on the topic of skills, I might as well go ahead and hop into the skill tree, because that is definitely one of my biggest complaints, and that's simply that the skill tree is severely lacking. If you compare this skill tree to the skill tree from Dying Light 1 or 2, you can immediately see just from looking at it what the problem is. And that's that it's fucking tiny, and you have basically zero options. There's also absolutely nothing new, except for the addition of a flamethrower and a grenade launcher, which of course are fun to use, but that's definitely not enough to make the skill tree feel worthwhile. And while one reason for this is the fact that you actually start off with a lot of skills that you had to earn from the previous games to show that Kyle Crane's experienced, I guess. And that's great and all, but that goes right back to what I just said about the charge kick being the only new skill, and is not a very good excuse. I mean, this is the third entry into the franchise, and you still have almost the same kit that you had from the first game. There is certainly room to add a lot of new abilities, and I was even talking with a friend of mine while playing through this game, and we mentioned how it'd be cool to have different skills offer alternative ways to use them, pretty much just acting like a skill modifier. Like for example, maybe instead of a basic kick, you could do like a spin kick or some shit like that, that would do more damage but take longer to do. Not just would that give your skills more variety, but it would also give you different sort of build options for when playing co-op with your friends, because then you could all choose different abilities for different skills and have a lot of variety. And another issue with this is that it just makes your overall progression as you play throughout the game feel extremely disappointing, because you don't really feel that rewarded every time you level up. The only choice you have to make is which skill tree you want to max first, basically, with zero real decision making. And this kind of leads me straight into the new beast abilities, because the new beast abilities don't exactly pick up the slack either, because not just do they not really give you that many new abilities, but they're also on their own completely separate skill tree that you max purely by playing through the story. And I mean, I'll say right off the bat, the beast form is fun. Every time you activate it, you definitely feel more powerful. It feels great to just send enemies flying with your punches. There's nice flashy finisher moves that you'll occasionally do on zombies where you'll just one-shot kill them by ripping off an arm or something. And these finishers also carry on over to bosses and elite enemies with even cooler finisher moves that I always made sure to do whenever I got the chance.
This dude did a 10-hit combo. This dude's doing straight.
But going back to the whole thing with the lack of new skills, outside of just making you more overall powerful, you only really get like 3 new skills that you can do in the beast mode, with that being the ability to throw big rocks, do an AoE ground smash attack, and an enhancement to your grappling hook. And as someone that's played the first Dying Light and remembers the PvP multiplayer mode and how fun it was to play as the mutated zombie in that, I just can't think about how disappointing it is in comparison. I mean, the whole selling point and gimmick of this game is the beast mode, but the zombie you play as in the PvP multiplayer mode had a way bigger skill tree with even more variety, and I don't know why they wouldn't think to carry some of that over to the beast. Such as the leaping jump you could do in that would allow you to jump like 20 plus feet over buildings. And something else that was on the skill tree was the ability to choose different mutations as you leveled up, so that you could become a more specialized infected in one type of combat, and that would have been something really cool to bring back to the beast, and again, have given you way more build variety for your beast form. Like for example, maybe at one of the levels you have the choice between getting the acid spit or like hardened volatile skin or something like that to make you more tanky. That's just an example, but that's something they could have done throughout the entire game and made the beast form just feel way more unique and powerful, instead of just a temporary Hulk smash mode. Where you get to mash left click for a few seconds and chuck rocks. And don't get me wrong, like I said, it is fun, purely because the combat in Dying Light is overall really fun and satisfying, but I kinda can't help but acknowledge the lack of effort. And it's another reason that I said in the intro that it really is apparent that this was a DLC turned full game, which it was. So I am happy to say that they removed one of the worst and also one of the most complained about aspects of Dying Light 2, with that being the shitty ass RPG mechanics that did absolutely nothing but take away from the spirit of Dying Light, and it did nothing in regards to making the game more fun. But for some stupid fucking reason, they unfortunately didn't get rid of all of them, still leaving the enemy levels and crafting recipe upgrades, which I don't really find that one an issue. But the enemy levels adds absolutely nothing to the game, considering that the enemies for the most part just scale to whatever level you are, meaning that for the most part it'll just feel like the first Dying Light. But then there's a couple areas on the map that are marked level 9, and if you go there, basically everything will one-shot kill you until you get to that level for no fucking reason other than just locking you out of a couple parts of the map until later on in the game. And there's not even really a reason to lock you out of those areas because there's not exactly anything super OP there or any problems that you would cause by going there either, especially considering that a lot of the best loot in the game is actually locked behind mission clearance and won't even spawn in the world until you get to a certain point in the story. So there really is absolutely no reason to have included this stupid ass RPG level scaling, and they need to just do away with it entirely. But luckily they did get the memo for the most part and got rid of everything else. I will give the game one positive, and that's that the Knights really do have a similar feel to the Knights in the first Dying Light, and really do have that same threat level. Dying Light 2 is pretty much the same way now if you play on Nightmare mode, considering that it makes volatiles way more of a threat and you can't really cheese with the paraglider to get away as often due to the extremely reduced stamina in the air, but it's still not quite the same, so I am glad that they nailed that. And if you get caught lacking in a bad spot, you will quickly be ganked and dealt with by low tier gods cloak covenants.
Evil ass motherfucker. Then I see you start to speed up. I have all my covenant cloaks, ripping off your clothes, your ass naked to the snow, stuck. Block side is BBC Junior, on the fucking right ass cheek on the left. You worthless specimen.
And I will say that while the Knights have been improved, chases have definitely been declined. And in a game that's two big gimmicks are parkour and zombies, it is very noticeable. And that's also one of my biggest complaints about the Beast in general, and that's that it has the worst map out of all of the Dying Lights. And I say that after having basically just replayed the other two. And the reason for that is because there's only one decent sized town in the entire game, and then 80% of the entire rest of the map is just wide open forest areas with the occasional building here and there. Not just does that make getting around the map a lot shittier than the previous games, but it also makes being chased by volatiles at night absolutely shit if you're anywhere outside of the main city, because there are so many areas of the map that are basically just open fucking swamps, and if you're caught there by volatiles, you have basically nothing to climb on or help you get away, so your only two options are to try to run and zigzag, but the volatiles are faster than you, so they'll just keep hitting you in the fucking cheeks, or to fight. But considering that they just keep respawning, you're gonna die eventually. And the previous two games were not like this. I might get some flack for this, but in my opinion, Dying Light 2 actually has the best map. Not just are there two huge different areas, but they're full of verticality, and you can take a chase damn near anywhere. There's always a building for you to climb up, there's always a trap for you to use, there's tons of interior buildings that you could lead a chase into, run up a flight of stairs, jump out a window, and it makes chases a lot of fun. And the same thing can be said about the first game, just with a bit less verticality, especially if you're in the Old Town area. And I just can't understand the thought process of making 80% of the map a wide open, flat fucking area with almost nowhere to take a chase. And this is honestly enhanced by the fact that there's basically no real reason to go out at nighttime in general, considering that the only thing you really get is more XP, but you could just go through the main game, do the side quest, and hit max level anyways, so there really is no reason. And there's even less reason, because in Dying Light 2 there are these areas called dark zones, and in dark zones there's more supplies. And the whole reason you would go to these dark zones at night is because during the daytime they were infested with volatiles, so the only safe time to go was at night, which would force you to obviously traverse through the city at nighttime, risking getting caught and risking a chase, whereas in this game you can go to the dark zones at any fucking time. Now the name Dark Zone doesn't even make sense. So there really is no goddamn reason to go out at nighttime unless you're just purposely looking for a chase. And again, you're probably not going to be doing that unless you're in the one main town. And even that one main town isn't very big. You can honestly accidentally run out of it if you just happen to go in one direction for slightly too long. But the map was probably my biggest personal disappointment about the gameplay, especially coming straight from Dying Light 2. And speaking of the Dark Zone and getting supplies, I honestly never really found a reason to actually go to the Dark Zones in general outside of the first time for each of them, because every Dark Zone would have a crafting blueprint in it. But I pretty much always had enough materials to craft everything I needed except for wires. I was always on a shortage for wires. You need wires to craft fucking everything. You even need wires to craft throwing knives, and you need like 4 of them. And the only real constant place I found to get wires was from searching like cash registers. Anyone who's played this game can vouch that there is a huge wire shortage, and you will always be on the prowl for them.
Don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. I need it!
The last thing I really have to say about the map in regards to it being so open is that they try to make up for this by giving you trucks that you can drive. There's a whopping total of 2 different trucks scattered throughout the map that you can use to get around, but that does not make up for it, especially when these trucks are boring as fuck. There's absolutely nothing special about them, especially if you played the following DLC for the first Dying Light, where much like this, the map is quite wide open, but in that game you have a buggy, and throughout the entire DLC you can get upgrades for this buggy and customize it, get skins for it, and it was honestly a lot of fun to use, where in this game you can't do jack shit with the trucks. You can't upgrade the truck, you can't customize it, you can't do fuck all with the truck. The only thing you can change for it is the skin. And I mean, sure, it was fun to drive through the zombies for a few minutes, but that gets old really quickly. And I don't know how they could have gone all out for a DLC and given you that much customization and even allow you to upgrade it. Whereas in the full game, you just get this lame ass truck, and that's supposed to make up for the extreme lack of verticality and parkour you can do throughout the map. Before I move on from anything to do with the combat, I just want to throw my 2 cents in on it real quick with a couple of my personal complaints, and that's that considering that Crane is basically supposed to be a superhuman in this game, he sure as fuck doesn't really feel like it, considering that he has the lung capacity of a fucking 3-year-old with tuberculosis. And it can make combat, especially against a lot of enemies, feel like an absolute fucking drag, because it feels like you run out of stamina damn near every 3 swings. Even by the end of the game at level 15, I was still running out of stamina so fucking quickly, and it really does just ruin the pace of combat. It's kind of the same way in Dying Light 2, especially if you're using a 2-handed weapon, but again, since Kyle's supposed to be enhanced, it really would be nice if I didn't feel like I was playing as Stephen Hawkins with lung cancer. Even more so considering that one of the funnest ways to traverse the map in this game is the grappling hook, and that really is the only way to get around quicker in the more wide open areas, since you can use your grappling hook to swing like Spider-Man from the trees. But considering that using the grappling hook drains stamina, you really can't swing that much before Crane drops to the ground fucking dry heaving. So it really would be nice to have a way to get more stamina or something. Like I said, even at max level, it just does not feel like they're enough for someone who's built like fucking Captain America. I will say I don't really have any complaints in regards to the parkour or the movement. It felt like they tweaked it a tad bit from Dying Light 2 to make Crane feel a bit less floaty, and I definitely like that, and I think it's in a great spot. I never really had any issues with my inputs dropping or getting stuck on objects, so that's all good. Like I said, I have no complaints. I just wish that the map was actually built to use it properly. I also don't understand why the weapons break so fucking fast. Clearly the Dying Light games and Breath of the Wild have the same weaponsmith, and whoever it is needs to be hanged by his balls because he sucks ass at his fucking job. I'm not against the mechanic itself, but I'm just so tired of how fast they break. These things are built like goddamn glass, man. I might as well be hitting these zombies with goddamn drywall. Now I will say that luckily they brought back the repair mechanic, and for the higher tier weapons you can repair repair at least a maximum of 3 times. But once you hit that limit, you have to get rid of that weapon no matter how cool it is or how much you like it. Which does suck to me, especially since in Dying Light 2 you can take it to the craftsmith and repair it basically an infinite amount of times as long as you have the money for it. But really, I just want these high tier weapons to have higher durability, because I'm tired of seeing this shit already below half durability after just a measly handful of fights. And my final complaint is that a lot of the boss fights, mainly the ones involved in the story, are just not fucking fun and poorly designed. At least on the brutal difficulty, which I personally felt inclined to play on. I always play on the highest difficulties in Dying Light because it actually does affect the amount of XP you get, and you get higher tier loot, kind of like in the Borderlands games. But on the brutal difficulty, the reason these story fights suck is because they just have too much fucking health. And no matter how good the game's combat is, it just gets so fucking old wailing on the same goddamn zombie for like 5+ fucking minutes, going through all my supplies and weapon durability, smacking this thing in the same goddamn spot. There were 2 in particular, with that being the final boss and this one stupid fucking Banshee boss, where I was just in fucking disbelief at how much health they had. And the worst part is they would take like your entire health bar in like one fucking hit. Made this shit go from Dying Light to Dying Souls real fucking quick, where you're just stuck there for like 5 minutes smacking the bitch a couple times, dodging, smacking the bitch a couple times, and then dodging. It's insane. Even your guns will take a damn like smidge off the enemy's health. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. Luckily, like I said, it's really only the story bosses that are like this, but holy shit, it's just not fun. And it made the final boss in particular a fucking slog to get through, and I did not enjoy it in the slightest. But really, those are my only complaints about the combat, since like I said, it's the same fun system from the other games, and I assume if you're playing the Beast, you've most likely played at least one of the other Dying Lights, and the gore mechanics feel the best that they've ever been. So really, there's only 2 other things to talk about before I get into the story, and that's the side content and any bugs I encountered. And oh, you bet your fucking ass I got a couple things to say about the bugs.
Kyle, it's okay. You're safe now.
So in regards to the Beast side content, I just want to say right off the bat that I think it's probably the worst out of the 3 games, in terms of the amount of side quests and extra activities to do. And even though I still managed to get 40 hours out of it, which is a decent amount of gameplay, that's still less than I got out of all the previous ones. And a big part of this is simply because of the way Techland handles its game updates, choosing to drip feed content over time as opposed to just releasing a full game in the state that it should be at launch. But in addition to that, which I'll go more in detail about, they've also removed some side content from Dying Light 2 as well, such as quarantine zones, given that inhibitors are no longer a thing, a severely decreased amount of towers, no more water or power stations, and in addition to that, the complete removal of any story RPG aspects, which was probably the only RPG aspect they added in Dying Light 2 that I actually enjoyed. But in Dying Light 2, you were actually given the ability to make choices at certain point in the story, which could give you different outcomes, as well as side quests, sometimes offering you additional dialogue options, and given the option to give the water and power stations to the survivors or PKs, which would alter the world around you. And these story choices in general also gave the game way more replayability since you could get different outcomes, giving you a reason to want to replay the game. Now, I will say that some of the side quests were good, but I definitely don't think there are enough of them. And one of the side quests in general was honestly so good that I'm surprised it wasn't just a story quest, and it honestly definitely should have been, considering that it explains a lot about Kyle Crane and what he's gone through since the first game. But during this side quest, Crane actually takes what's basically a peyote plant and starts tripping balls. And during this, you get a look into the guilt he's been feeling ever since he accidentally accidentally unleashed the virus to the rest of the world at the end of the following DLC, the fact that he still remembers and feels guilty about Jade to the point where he still carries her necklace around his watch, and the things he had to go through while being experimented on. And all of this are things that I felt like were severely lacking in the main story, which is why I really don't feel like this should have been a side quest, because if you happen to miss it or just choose not to do it, you're 100% going to be left with questions. And I feel like the side quests were really lacking a sense of world building, if that makes sense. In the first game, all the side quests really helped you connect with the city of Haran and all the people in it, and by doing the side quest, it made the world feel much more alive. And the same thing could be said about Dying Light 2, where you're in essentially the last bastion for humanity and the last city where the remaining 5% of humanity is huddled. And I always felt like the best thing about the Dying Light quest were the world building, and not just do I feel like the side quests in The Beast were lacking in that department, but there's also just a lot of missed opportunity in general. Without really going into spoilers, later on in the game, you find a camp of, let's just say, special people, and instead of having multiple side quests in this camp to really help you connect with these people and actually make what happens to them in the story feel more impactful, there's like a grand total of 3, and a couple of those characters you never actually really see again in the main story. And outside of the actual side quest, with the removal of quarantine zones and the other mentioned things, there's also just not that much reason to explore the world in general outside of just looking for loot, like in any of the Dying Light games. The tower climbing sections are also completely removed as well, which I know some people complained about, but like I mentioned before how the whole selling point of this game is zombies and parkour, I personally didn't mind the climbing sections, and it always felt satisfying after completing one and look down at the world below me. And while sure some of these things were basically just your Ubisoft open world level of activities, they don't exactly give you anything to replace these with in The Beast. Hell, they didn't even bother bringing back volatile hives, which were both one of the coolest and creepiest parts of the first game's DLC, The Following. But considering how many people are calling this game a love letter from Techland, I really do feel like it's lacking in several departments and missing quite a few things that were in the previous games. And in regards to what I mentioned about Techland's update structure, there is absolutely zero in-game content in The Beast right now. Once you beat the story, the credits roll and then you just reload your last save. There isn't even an epilogue where you get together with your group and talk about what's next or talked about what happened. It is such an awkward end to the story. And because Techland chooses to not give us Nightmare Mode, New Game Plus, or Legend levels on release, even though, let's be honest, we know they're coming, there's pretty much nothing to do afterwards until they finally decide to add this stuff. And while the first and second game also released like this, like I said before, the first and second game not just were more complete games on release, with more content, with the first game also having the PvP mode, but in addition to that, this is the third game in the franchise. I am tired of being drip-fed content for mostly single-player games in general, especially when that content is something as basic as New Game Plus. There is no fucking reason New Game Plus could not have been included on release, but the whole reason they want to release it like this is to try to bring more people back to the game, so people can praise it and act like it's some huge big update, while the people who actually want to put time into it and play it on launch are left with nothing to do in the meantime. And because of that, I actually went back to Dying Light 2 and have been playing Dying Light 2 for the past couple days in between editing, just because there are legend levels, bounties, tower raids, and other things for me to do. Techland at the end of the day are the ones that chose to take this from a DLC for Dying Light 2 to a quote-unquote full $60 game. So with that, I also expect $60 worth of content, which I just do not think it has at the moment. And with that out of the way, let's get into the bugs real quick. So in regards to the bugs, luckily outside of a couple odd and pretty random crashes, there were only really 2 bugs, but both of them were pretty big fucking bugs, such as falling through the world a couple times. and one that I'm honestly not even sure how it got past playtesting, considering that both me and my friend and plenty of other people all seem to have experienced this glitch, not to mention that it's a glitch that revolves around this game's entire core day and night function, and that's that on multiple occasions I would get stuck in what was pretty much a permanent daytime or a permanent nighttime, yet time in game would still continue to function as normal, meaning that I would either have volatiles running around in what would seem to be the middle of the fucking day, or I would just be stuck in eternal darkness, desperately craving for a mere flicker of light, as I have to rely on my flashlight to see an inch in front of me at all fucking times.
A dimension of sight, a dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
And again, given how prevalent this bug seems to be, I am not sure how this got past playtesting, considering that it seems like something that anybody would have caught, and again, is a pretty game-breaking bug that ruins one of the core mechanics of Dying Light. And by the time I finish this review and it's on YouTube, they may have went ahead and already patched this bug, but that doesn't change the fact that it was here on launch, and certainly did not help my gameplay experience. But with that out of the way, I will say that for the most part, it's a pretty decent launch in that everything functions properly and it runs well. Not quite as good as it could be, but certainly better than most PC launches nowadays. And like I said, I didn't experience that many bugs, it's just the ones that I did were quite big, but it's definitely not the most broken launch. So with that, I think it's time I finally get into the story, because while the story has never been the main focus of the Dying Light games and has never had a super deep narrative, I also think that this is probably the worst story in any of the Dying Light games so far, and yes, that is including 2, which was already pretty bad, purely because it was such a missed opportunity for something that could have been way more badass, and it's supposed to be all about Kyle Crane's return and his revenge story, and it was a pretty fucking disappointing revenge story. I really do feel like they dropped the ball a bit on the story, and that they really could have done a lot more with it. And not just that, but I feel like they really do take the Dying Light universe in a couple weird directions that I'm really not sure I like that much. Especially one of the things I liked most about the first Dying Light is that it felt more grounded as far as zombie games go. And I'm not even talking about the GRE experimenting on people to make them enhanced, because at least you could argue there's some sci-fi behind that, but I mean, hey, at least it makes for fun gameplay elements, which I feel like is a bit more important at the end of the day. But they really do take Dying Light fully in the Resident Evil direction, especially at the end of the game. And while on the topic of the story, I might as well mention that this game has some of the most cornball ass dialogue, and it's honestly pretty funny, with lines that you would hear straight from the emo kids at the high school lunch table, such as, "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry."
Move it!
I wouldn't push me if I were you. You don't want to piss me off.
You're making me angry.
You're gonna see a really ugly side of me.
So with that being shown, that's pretty much the level of dialogue you can expect in this DLC. And that's already saying a lot, considering that there was some pretty fucking bad dialogue in Dying Light 2. And like I said, that does suck, because I mean, I really do think they could have done a bit more with the whole revenge plot in Crane's character after him being trapped for 13 years. And for a guy who's been trapped and experimented on for 13 years, it certainly doesn't show through his character and the way they chose to write him in this story.
I've survived 13 years of this torture. But I can't take any more.
But the story starts off 13 years after Kyle Crane was captured at the end of the following DLC, where Kyle had begun to transform into a volatile. But during these experiments and Crane's sheer willpower, he somehow managed to keep the infection at bay, and instead turned him into a half-human volatile hybrid, who's basically just built like Captain America and can Hulk out when he wants to just tear people to pieces. But at some point during all this, Spike, from the first 2 Dying Light games, and another really familiar looking masked character come and try to rescue him, and in the process they also get captured, But during all of this, Crane finally manages to escape with the help of some unknown woman. And after you escape, the first thing you do is meet up with this unknown woman, whose name is Olivia. And I'll say right off the bat that she's definitely the hottest of all the Dying Light girls so far. Especially Lawan.
It's good to see you too.
Disgusting black creatures.
And the first thing that this bitch suggests that you do is go out and hunt down these GRE experiment zombies, literal test tube gub zombie babies, so that you can extract their blood and inject it into yourself to apparently make your beast form more powerful and help you control it. And immediately that made me suspicious, and I assumed that she was trying to kill Crane with AIDS, and lots of it. And for pretty much about the first half of the game, that's what you do, with some occasional other stuff mixed in, such as repairing power plants and dragging cables, without much revenge happening in between. And in the process, you meet what would appear to be some rugged dyke, rocking the typical rug muncher haircut where half of her head is shaved, to immediately assert her dominance over any other clam slammers in the vicinity.
Disgusting!
And she sends you on some errands and eventually helps you find a couple of the chimeras. And this is pretty much how the game goes on until you eventually have your first encounter with the Baron. And the Baron is the scientist in particular who is experimenting on you and the one that Crane wants revenge on the most. And during your first encounter with the Baron, this lesbian has the sheer audacity to betray you to the Baron, and you wind up being forced to free this other experiment victim known as the Beast, hence the title of the game, who is also captured by the Baron and is the person who tried to help you in the beginning of the game, leading to a second side plot involving him. And this is also the point in the game where I was really starting to miss the RPG aspects of being able to make your own choices in the story, because I wanted to kill the sheriff immediately.
Police, get what you fucking deserve!
Especially considering that this bitch dipped off into hiding for basically the remainder of the fucking game, only showing her face at the very end. And pretty much the only excuse that you get from her is, oh, it was either I betray you or he killed my people. Fuck you, cow.
You stupid bitch.
But after escaping the cave, you go around, kill a couple more chimeras, until you eventually stumble upon a hippie camp filled with other GRE victims, who went through a lot of the same trials that you did, except came out a lot worse. Except instead of coming out built like Captain America with superhuman strength, they developed telepathic abilities.
Nigga, what the fuck is this bullshit?
And this is one of the things that I was not a very big fan of. I personally don't really think the Dying Light universe needs telepathy, nor does it really add anything except stupid bullshit. And this is only the beginning of the full Resident Evil route I mentioned before. And don't get me wrong, I really like Resident Evil, but I play Resident Evil and Dying Light expecting two different things. And while I'm on the topic of this camp, I also just want to mention that they all look like liberal theater kids who all hate their parents and live on a soy diet. And basically all of them look like absolute abominations, and the absolute last thing I would want is one of these twinks trying to touch my mind telepathically.
Get out of my head! Get out of my head!
And after you do a couple quests to help this camp and fight another chimera or two, the leader of the camp, who is also an old hag, fucking granny might I add, asks you to retrieve something for her that can apparently enhance her telepathic abilities and allow her to control the zombies. I also found this entire plot point fucking nonsensical in general, because if you could choose one person from the camp to give this ability to, an ability this powerful in a zombie apocalypse, why the fuck would you give it to this goddamn grandma, leader of the fucking camp or not, instead of someone younger who's probably gonna live a bit longer? Even if they do have a reduced lifespan from the experiments, they are still, I guarantee you, gonna live longer than this fucking 80-year-old woman. Let alone somebody who has zero fighting capabilities and is absolutely fucking useless if they get cornered on their own. From a survival standpoint and even a story standpoint, it makes no fucking sense, and not a single other person tries to contest this or make a point about this. What an absolute fucking waste. You might get 2 years out of this ability max.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit. Fuck.
And in the middle of all that, a new idea is also proposed to you by the camp to lure out the Baron so that Crane can get his greasy palms on him by capturing the beast and injecting him with something that will apparently revert the experiments enough so that he can get his mind back. Don't ask me, it's not really elaborated on much. But the plan works, you have a fight with the beast, and after Crane knocks him the fuck out with a baseball bat without even needing to use his beast abilities, and he's injected with his COVID booster and Elon's Neuralink, you find out that the beast is actually Aiden, the main character from Dying Light 2. Which, as someone that's played both the games, I thought that was pretty cool and was a nice way to tie the two games together and have the two main characters meet, and was one of the few moments in the story I actually did like. But my joy was immediately shat on by the way they handled Aiden and made him an absolute useless retard. Because as soon as Aiden regains consciousness, you all begin hatching a plan to go invade the Baron's castle and fight him and his army using the Hag's telepathic abilities to bring your own zombie army, and immediately after that, the screen fades to black and they're just like, oh, Aiden left and got captured by the Baron.
You dumb motherfucker!
I said what the fuck out loud and actually laughed because it was an almost comical transition. You were all standing there at the table making a plan, and then the screen just fades to black, no cutscene or anything, and they're just like, oh yeah, Aiden got captured. What the fuck?
Wake up. Aiden is gone.
What?
He just disappeared.
What, are you retarded?
Not just do I feel like that was out of character for Aiden, I also refuse to believe that he would get captured that fucking easily. Especially now that he has these beast powers and looks like he's been taking weight training lessons from fucking Bane. And then he proceeds to do absolutely nothing for the remainder of the fucking story, basically getting zero dialogue with Crane until the last few minutes of the final mission, which, as you can imagine, is invading the Baron's castle to kill his bitch ass and get Aiden and Spike back, who's also been in the Baron's hand since the beginning of the game. And while I'm talking about the Baron, I just want to say that this dude is such a shit villain. First off, he's the stereotypical German accent sounding blue-eyed, blonde-haired villain, real subtle Techland. But on top of that, he is just so poorly written and is like the most great value of great value Weskers from Resident Evil 5.
Promised I'd kill you, and I always keep my promises.
7 minutes. 7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
Not to mention that you only have like 3 encounters with him in the whole fucking game. So half the time you forget he even exists. All for him to have the most cliche of cliche lines of wanting to advance humanity further with zombie DNA. You can see what I mean with the whole Resident Evil talk. But during the attack on the Baron's castle, things start looking shit. A lot of the camp members die, curing the earth of their horrible disfigurements.
Oh god, this is HIV. I have HIV. I know I do.
Until eventually the Hag starts ordering a bunch of the big fucking Resident Evil tyrants to come help you. And while Crane is sneaking in the castle on his own, one of the most obvious betrayals of all time happens when it reveals that Olivia was working for the Baron the whole time. No way, the super suspicious bitch who had you injecting yourself with zombie blood the whole time for an unknown reason, like you were a guinea pig, was was working for the Baron. What a shocker.
Oh, it is a fucking surprise.
And you find out that all of this, including you escaping, was part of the Baron's plan and basically just a test run for your new abilities. The stupidest fucking shit ever, and makes absolutely no sense when you actually reflect on the game and realize there is no way in fuck the Baron could have predicted all of this down to this very moment, and is not an example of a character being smart and is instead an example of a character just reading the script. And because of this stupid bitch Olivia, you're all tied up at a lunch table, and the funniest moment in the entire game proceeds to happen.
Wake up! Wait!
Where was I?
Fuck you, Hag. Oh yeah, and then the Baron proceeds to immediately kill Spike and the scientist guy that's been helping you the entire game.
I got green.
You are a fucking dead man! Again with the Antichrist,
And I will say that is such a fucking unceremonious death for Spike, and he was treated so shit as a reoccurring character. You have a few quests with him in the first Dying Light, and there was also an entire post-game event revolving around Spike, and then he gets one scene in the very beginning of Dying Light 2, and then you bring him back in the Beast for like a total of 2 scenes, and then just slit his throat. R.I.P. Spike, I guess. And during all this, Cranes just sit tied up in his chair, not trying to go beast mode and stop this or anything. Same thing with Aiden, just sitting there being fucking useless. And after 2 people die because of Olivia's betrayal, she tries to pull the, oh, I changed my mind. After actually talking to you guys and being with you guys for a while, I regret my decisions. Fuck you, bitch. She gets 2 people killed, and there is absolutely zero consequences for her betrayal. And that's another reason I say it's so weird there's not even any sort of epilogue after the credits, because she basically just gets off scot-free. She bullshits you the entire game, betrays you, gets 2 people killed, fucks up your entire plan, and then is apparently just instantly redeemed because she helps you at the last second and apparently changes her mind. Like she couldn't have done that earlier before 2 people died. You fucking useless shitter. Give me back my RPG mechanics so I can buckshot blast this greasy cunt.
Dumb bitch.
But after you guys escape the table, you and Aiden team up for a decently cool moment to go fight the Baron. And like I said before, this fight is absolutely fucking dog shit because he has way too much fucking health and basically kills you in 2 fucking hits. It is quite literally a Dark Souls boss where you just spend 10 minutes running in circles, getting 2 hits, dodging left and right, all the while trying to make sure your stamina doesn't run out because it'll be a guaranteed death. And the boss has a grand total of like 3 or 4 different attacks. And it's a 2-phase boss because after you get through the first phase, game pulls its final Resident Evil moment and he injects himself with a vial, transforming him into a fucking Resident Evil tyrant, and you have a phase 2 fight which is 3 times as dog shit and is the exact same thing. They really managed to make this fight as unfun as possible. And after you finally finish this bullshit boss, Aiden and the Hag come walking out to your left and right as you gaze into your sunset, and then in one of the most cliche, cringe Marvel movie endings ever, the GRE lady from the end of the first game flies up in front of you in a helicopter and is like, "This isn't the last you'll see of me, Crane," and then flies off like she's the fucking Green Goblin. pretty much just setting up Dying Light 3 or 4 with Crane and Aiden. And like I said before, I just found it to be such a fucking lame cliche ending. And then the credits roll and there is absolutely zero epilogue. After that, you just load back into the open world and nothing changes. I couldn't even find Aiden to talk to in the post game or anything. There is absolutely zero post game. And they absolutely failed to make Crane feel like a guy on a revenge tale who was locked up and experimented on for 13 years, and there was very little revenge to be had. And outside of that one side quest, there is also very little character growth given to Crane or reflection on how he feels about this whole thing, being experimented on, causing the outbreak, and if you don't do that side quest, then there basically is none of that. And it really does feel like an injustice to the main character of the first game. And I really don't get a lot of the blind glaze this game is getting, where people are acting like it's the second coming of Christ and the greatest Dying Light game yet. So that being said, let's get into the conclusion. Like I made it clear in the intro, if you do like the first two Dying Light games, I'm sure you'll get enjoyment out of this, because the basic gameplay loop from the previous games is there, and the same satisfying zombie killing, gore, and parkour is still there as well. But I also feel like basically every other department of this game is currently lacking, especially the end game, and the story really isn't good enough to be carrying everything either, and it's also probably the worst story out of all the games so far, in addition to having the worst map out of all the games so far, which definitely isn't going to change and is going to remain the same no matter how many updates or patches they do. And because of the way Techland decides to handle their games, instead of just releasing it with all the features that should be there, we are most likely going to have to wait several months for them to release New Game Plus and all the other in-game content that should be there, considering it's already there on the previous games and they know their gameplay plan by now. But instead, they'd rather ask us for full price now and content later. And also, like I said in the intro, I feel like it's extremely obvious that this was a DLC, because along with the story, the skill tree and side content also feels extremely underdeveloped. Nor does it really add or expand on anything from the previous games outside of the new Beast mode, which is supposed to be the entire selling point of the game, yet is somehow still more lackluster than the zombie from the first game's PvP mode. Which leads me into the would I recommend it. And like I said, if you like the first two Dying Light games, I'm sure you'll get enjoyment out of this, but simply because of its current state, I would probably just wait for a sale. And another reason it would be good to wait for a sale is because by the time it does go on sale, they'll most likely have finally released the post-game content and have tweaked and patched any of the incomplete game mechanics now. Because I really do feel like this should be priced more around DLC range as opposed to a $60 full game. Because even if I did get 40 hours of content out of it, I still got more out of the other ones, and they were the same price. And for my final score, and remember I'm rating these just in terms of zombie games in general, if I was to give the first Dying Light an 8 out of 10, and Dying Light 2 in its current state a 7 out of 10, then I would probably have to give Dying Light the Beast a 6 out of 10, because overall I feel like it's the most incomplete with the worst map, and just simply doesn't have enough to keep me around at the moment. So if you are a fan of Dying Light, just give it a few months, wait for that Steam sale, and you'll be doing yourself a favor by getting a more complete game at an even better price than I paid for it. So if you enjoyed the review or found it helpful, feel free to leave a like and a sub to help out the channel and feed the algo gods, and a big thanks to this channel's members and Poirlights, as your guys' support really means a lot and also helps make these reviews more affordable. And I will see you guys for the next one.